"Shut up! You don't belong here!" The words hit harder than the slap that followed. Alicia's head snapped to the side. Her cheek stung, but her composure didn't crack. She straightened slowly, her fingers brushing her face only once, eyes steady. "Are you finished?" she asked quietly. The man standing before her, Preston Hale, was red-faced and smug, a man too used to money buying him immunity. "You should watch your tone," he said. "You people ought to learn where you stand." She tilted her head, voice calm. "And where's that exactly?" Preston smirked. "Not in here." The crowd shifted uneasily. The Sterling Club was known for exclusivity, its kind of exclusivity. Old money, old names. And Preston, the son of a real estate magnate, had inherited both arrogance and ignorance in equal measure. Alicia looked at him for a long moment, not with fear, but with something sharper. Pity. "Funny," she said. "I didn't realize membership had a color." The silence thickened. Somewhere in the corner, a phone camera clicked on. Preston's smirk faltered. "You think this is a joke? My family practically owns this place. You're lucky I don't have you escorted out right now." Alicia's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Try it." He took a half step closer, his cologne heavy with entitlement. "You think you can talk to me like that?" "I'm not thinking about it," she replied softly. "I just did." A murmur ran through the lounge. Preston's jaw clenched. He'd never been challenged like this, not by anyone he considered beneath him. His temper flared again, but before he could speak, the club manager hurried forward, eyes darting nervously between them. "Mr. Hale, please, let's not make a scene." Preston rounded on him. "A scene? She just insulted me in front of everyone." The manager turned to Alicia, voice trembling. "Ma'am, perhaps you should—" Alicia cut him off with a look that made even him stop mid-sentence. "Perhaps I should what?" Preston laughed mockingly. "See? Even the staff agree. People like you don't know how to act when you get invited into a real establishment." The manager's eyes flicked to the floor. No one defended her. Alicia took a deep breath, the kind that steadies storms. "Do you know what's worse than arrogance, Mr. Hale?" she asked, her voice almost gentle. He raised an eyebrow. "Enlighten me." "Ignorance dressed in expensive shoes." A ripple of gasps spread through the crowd. Preston's expression hardened, and that's when the door behind her opened. The sound of leather soles on marble carried through the still air. Heads turned. A tall man stepped into the room, broad-shouldered, composed, his presence like gravity itself. His gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on the trembling manager, the frozen guests, and finally, on his wife. "Alicia?" His voice was low, controlled. Alicia turned, her expression softening. "David," Preston sneered. "Oh, perfect. You brought your date to bail you out? How cute." The man didn't even look at him. He stepped forward, placing his coat calmly on the nearest chair. "What happened?" "She was out of line," Preston snapped. "You should control your woman." The room collectively inhaled. Alicia's hand tightened on her clutch, but David just looked at Preston for a long, unblinking second, the kind of silence that could melt stone. "My woman," he said slowly, "is the chief research officer at Hale Biomedical." Preston blinked. "What?" David stepped closer. "Yes, the company your father founded, the one she helped save from a federal lawsuit last year." The words hit like cold water. A few guests exchanged startled glances. "And you are?" Preston managed, his voice quieter now. David smiled slightly. "David Carter, CEO of Carter Industries." The name spread through the crowd like wildfire. Preston's mouth fell open. "Wait, Carter, as in—" "Yes," David said simply, "as in the company that recently bought controlling shares of Hale Biomedical, which means technically—" He glanced at Alicia, then back to Preston. "You just assaulted your employer's boss's wife." The color drained from Preston's face. The manager finally found his voice. "Mr. Carter, I had no idea." David's eyes flicked toward him. "That's the problem. None of you had any idea who she was until I walked in. And that's exactly why I'm here." The crowd stood frozen. No one dared to move. Alicia reached out, resting her hand lightly on her husband's arm. "David," she said softly, "don't. He's not worth it." David looked at her, and then at the sea of faces around them. "Maybe not, but they all need to hear this." He turned back to Preston, whose arrogance had completely dissolved. "You don't get to define who belongs anywhere, not with your money, not with your last name. The world you grew up in, the one that told you you're better than others, is collapsing. And tonight, you just helped it along." The silence was electric. Even the pianist had stopped playing. Preston stammered, "Mr. Carter, I didn't realize—" "No," David said, voice cutting through like glass. "You didn't. That's the problem." He turned to the manager. "You'll find her membership restored immediately, and he gestured to Preston, "revoked." The manager nodded rapidly. Yes, sir, of course." Preston's lips moved, but no sound came out. His confidence was gone, replaced by pure fear. David turned back to his wife, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" Alicia nodded. "I've been worse. He's not the first, won't be the last." David's jaw tightened. "Maybe it's time we change that." He guided her toward the exit, hand gently at her back. The crowd parted, silent and ashamed. As they walked out, Alicia paused at the door. She looked back at Preston, trembling, humiliated, surrounded by people who once admired him. Her voice was calm, steady. "You should remember something, Preston. The higher you build your ego, the longer the fall." She turned and walked away, the doors closing softly behind her. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp with the scent of rain. David stopped beside the car, his tone quiet but firm. "You shouldn't have to keep proving your worth." Alicia met his gaze. "Maybe not. But sometimes the world needs to see what worth looks like when it refuses to bow." He smiled faintly. "You always were the stronger one." She gave a small laugh. "You just have the bigger headlines." They got into the car. For a moment, it was peaceful, until David's phone buzzed. He frowned as he read the message. "It's from my assistant." "What does it say?" He looked up, eyes narrowing. "It says Preston's father just called an emergency meeting at Hale Biomedical. Something about a retaliation lawsuit." Alicia's smile faded. "Retaliation?" David nodded slowly. "He's not done. Not yet." The car engine hummed to life, headlights cutting through the rain. Alicia looked out the window, her reflection blending with the city lights. "He made his move," she said quietly. "Now it's our turn." David's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Then let's remind him who he's dealing with." Question for you. What do you think Preston's father will do next? Fight back or finally face justice? Rain streaked down the windows of the Carter estate like silver threads. Alicia stood by the glass, her reflection steady, but her heart far from calm. The city lights blinked in the distance, the same city where humiliation had turned into headlines overnight. David walked in quietly, phone in hand, expression unreadable. "It's confirmed," he said. "Preston's father, Charles Hale, is filing a defamation suit. Claims we damaged his company's reputation." Alicia turned slowly. "His son slapped me in front of 50 people, and we're the ones damaging their reputation?" David's jaw tightened. "That's how power protects itself, by pretending it's the victim." He crossed the room, handing her the phone. On screen was a statement from Hale Biomedical. "Recent events involving the Carter family are exaggerated. We reject any allegations of misconduct from our associates and maintain the highest professional standards." Alicia exhaled softly. "Professional standards," she murmured. "They've learned to weaponize politeness." David studied her for a long moment. "You don't have to fight this. I can handle it." She shook her head. "No, this isn't just about me anymore. It's about every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet because her truth makes someone uncomfortable." The next morning, Alicia walked into the Hale Biomedical headquarters, the same glass tower she had once helped save from collapse. People stared as she passed, whispers trailing behind her like smoke. At the reception desk, the guard straightened. "Dr. Carter, Mr. Hale's expecting you." She nodded once and stepped into the elevator. The mirrored walls reflected not fear, but resolve. When the doors opened, Charles Hale was already waiting. Silver hair, tailored suit, the kind of man whose handshake was rehearsed and whose smile never reached his eyes. "Alicia," he said smoothly. "I was hoping we could handle this privately." She walked to the table, every step deliberate. "Privately is what you wanted when your son hit me," she said evenly. "Publicly is what you got when he forgot that decency still matters." His jaw twitched. "You're angry. I understand. But this lawsuit, it's just business. I have to protect my company's image." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "By smearing mine?" He hesitated, then smiled. The kind of smile men use when they believe the world is theirs. "You and your husband have influence. I have legacy. Surely we can find common ground." "Legacy," she repeated softly. "You mean power that never had to earn its conscience." He leaned back, folding his hands. "Don't let emotion cloud your judgment, Dr. Carter. You're a brilliant woman, but brilliance doesn't change how the world works." Alicia met his gaze. "No, Mr. Hale, it changes who the world listens to." By evening, the confrontation was everywhere. Someone had leaked audio from their meeting, Alicia's calm defiance against Hale's manipulation. Clips flooded social media. "You can't buy silence with old money." Power without empathy is just vanity. His stand with Alicia trended for hours. Meanwhile, at Carter Industries, David watched the footage in silence. His assistant turned to him. "Do you think she planned for it to leak?" David smiled faintly. "No, she didn't have to. Truth leaks on its own when it's loud enough." 3 days later, the lawsuit backfired spectacularly. Investors demanded transparency. Reporters unearthed questionable accounts tied to Hale Biomedical's board, shell donations, luxury write-offs, and hidden bribes. In a single week, the empire that had once stood untouchable began to crack. And then came the press conference. Alicia stood at the podium, cameras flashing like lightning. Behind her, the Carter Industries logo gleamed, not as a brand, but as a statement. "I didn't come here for revenge," she began. "I came here for accountability. Because every time we excuse arrogance as confidence or discrimination as a misunderstanding, we give it permission to grow." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. The slap hurt, but not as much as the silence that followed it. Silence is what allows injustice to feel comfortable. The room fell quiet. Every word was a steady heartbeat. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," she continued. "I'm here to remind everyone, respect isn't earned by money. It's earned by how you treat people when no one's watching." Later that night, she and David sat on their balcony, the city glowing below. "You know," David said, pouring 2 cups of tea, "you didn't just win a battle, you changed the conversation." Alicia smiled faintly. "Conversations change faster than hearts, but maybe it's a start." He looked at her for a moment. "I've seen you in boardrooms, hospitals, now the front pages. And you never once lost your calm." She laughed softly. "Calm isn't weakness, it's control. If I shouted, they'd call me emotional. If I cried, they'd call me dramatic. But when I stayed still, they had to listen." David's gaze softened. "That's why I fell in love with you." Alicia smirked. "Because I don't shout?" "Because you don't have to." They both laughed quietly. The next morning brought the final blow to Hale Biomedical. Federal investigators announced a full audit, not just because of the lawsuit, but because of financial irregularities Alicia had hinted at in her old reports. Charles Hale resigned publicly, citing health reasons. Preston issued a video apology that sounded more rehearsed than remorseful. But the world had already moved on, to the woman who refused to bow. A week later, Alicia visited the same Sterling club where everything began. She stood in the very lounge where the slap had echoed, now quiet except for the sound of light music. The manager approached nervously. "Dr. Carter, I didn't expect you to come back." She smiled gently. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to remind myself. This place didn't define me." He nodded, shame softening his tone. "We're making changes. Diversity training, new membership rules. It's overdue." Alicia placed a card on the counter. "Good." When the world changes, it should start where it was most comfortable staying the same. She turned and walked out, the same quiet confidence in her step as the day she walked in. Only this time, no one dared whisper. That evening, Alicia and David hosted a small charity dinner. The theme was simple: respect beyond titles. The proceeds went toward education grants for women from marginalized communities entering law and science. During her closing speech, Alicia looked out at the crowd. "People often ask me how I kept my composure," she said. "The truth is, I didn't win because I stayed silent. I won because I chose what my silence meant. It wasn't surrender, it was strength. And when the time came to speak, my words carried weight." The room erupted in applause. Later, as the lights dimmed and guests departed, David wrapped his arm around her. "You turned humiliation into hope," he said softly. Alicia smiled. "No, I just reminded people that grace is not weakness. It's a mirror, and when arrogance looks into it, it sees itself." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city glow, no longer in defiance, but in peace. Life lesson. True strength isn't loud. It's calm, steady, and unshakable, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Dignity is the armor that arrogance can't penetrate. Question for you. If you were in Alicia's place that night, would you have stayed calm or fought back another way? Comment your answer below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us power fades, but character lasts forever.